So, you were gonna give me a brief history.
Here we are.
Of your life, where you were born and...
I was born in Cleveland, 35 years old. Grew up in Las Vegas.
To what age?
14.
Yeah.
Okay. Las Vegas is kind of a hard town to grow up in. You get in a lot of trouble because everything's illegal unless you're 21. So I got sent back to Cleveland and started tattooing with my mom, or apprenticing, and.
So you started. Your mom was a tattooer.
Yeah.
Okay, in Cleveland.
Yes.
And wow.
Yeah, she had a shop there with my stepdad for 30 years before I got there.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Still there.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that's where you started out?
Yeah.
And you were 14, 15?
Let's see.
Started working in the shop?
Yeah.
Cool. And then you started tattooing in that shop?
Yeah.
And how old were you then?
2 weeks after I started.
Oh yeah, they put you right in there,
straight to work. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So, what kind of stuff were you doing there?
Mostly small stuff. I remember the first tit, I shaked a lot. That kind of thing. It's like cool, 14-year-old grabbing a 35-year-old tit kind of freaked me out a little bit. But other than that, a lot of tigers.
Well, what year was this?
This was 88, I think.
1988. So you were doing like a lot of biker stuff.
Yeah.
That sort of.
A lot of Greg Irons. Well, not so much biker stuff, but
tribal and.
Not tribal at all. It hadn't even come out yet, really. I thought there was a lot more to it when I had to do my first one, and it wasn't until 3-4 years after I started tattooing, and then it turned out to be a bunch of JS's.
JS's?
Well, yeah, Jonathan Shaw kind of spawned that whole thing, and everything he did was a bunch of JS's, so...
Okay.
If you look at the older tattoos, they're all JS's.
Okay. So would you say like you apprenticed in that shop? How long did you work there?
5 years.
5 years. Okay. And you learned a good bit about tattooing, or?
Not so much. I pretty much went through the roughest part there, and then I wanted to work with Jack Rudy. He was like my, all-time idol back then.
How'd you find out about Jack Rudy?
My mom told me about him. She was like, watch out for Carrie Barber's work and Jack Rudy's work, and that's where you want to,
And she was showing you examples and stuff.
Yeah.
And
I was really impressed by this, like Malcolm X portrait I saw Jack Rudy do. When I was like 15, I was insane, bro. It was like, couldn't even fathom, how to begin to start this thing,
right.
And how perfect he got it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I saw in a tattoo magazine that Winona had a spot open, and I knew she was married to Jack, so I called Winona and I sent her some photos, and she was like, yeah, I got a spot for you, She was like, you do this like really nice black and gray stuff, we got to work on the color stuff. So I'm going to send you to Kent Cameron, season you a little bit, and then in January, I'm going to send you to Watton. And I was like, well, I really wanted to work with Jack, but I was like, well, hell, I'm going to go to Ken, learn how to, really tattoo then. Yeah, I'll take it, So I think I was about 17 or 18 at the time.
Wow. And you were off to see Ken where in the country?
Sacramento. He's just opened a shop in Citrus Heights. Just came back from working with Paul Jeffries in Calgary. So
he just opened a shop and.
Yeah, it was kind of a slow shop. It just opened, but it was more of a learning experience. Like. When I got there, I didn't even know how to make needles. My stepdad was one of those old timers, and hunting with Huck Spalding. You know, like all those guys were like, you know, wasn't so many tattooers back then. You know, so it's very close knit.
Your
very
stepdad was
secretive.
close with Huck Spalding.
Yeah,
That's
very
really
close.
interesting.
Yeah,
Oh my
really
gosh.
good friends.
Cool.
And
He kind of hid the information from you.
yeah, I didn't know how to make needles. I didn't know about an autoclave.
Oh,
Nothing
wow.
about that, you know. And I went to work with Ken, and you know, he opened me up to all this stuff within like 3 months. You know, I came back from Sacramento, and all of a sudden, you know, I got all this information, and you know, I'm doing all these color tattoos with calligraphied outlines, and you know, and it's all the stuff Ken was showing me.
This
you
is
know?
early 90s time period now. This is
Yeah, yeah,
like 92,
yeah, somewhere around there.
92, 93.
Yeah, I'd probably say somewhere around that time period. It had to be before '92. Yeah, when I got back, I just demanded they got an autoclave, and you know, this and that. And this is how things are done, and I showed them how to make magnums. You know, we used 5 flats and single needles until then. You know, with 2 Spalding Supremes.
Yeah.
You know, I started tattooing. My stepdad took the capacitor off the machine, handed it to me. So you don't need that, you know, and put a big fucking blister on my hand because that bitch got so hot.
The Spalding Supreme with no capacitor.
No capacitor.
Yeah.
I think he did it on purpose, just to kind of, you know,
Teach you a lesson.
yeah, just for good measure.
Bastard.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more that goes along with that,
Yeah. Well,
but
anyway,
we'll get into that.
well, maybe not. So just to back up a little bit, was there anybody else working at Ken Cameron's at the time, or was it just you and Ken, or
He had a floor guy named Matt.
were there any other tattooers, or
No.
It was just you and he.
Just me and Ken.
Oh, that's a really intimate.
Yeah, it was great.
You got to learn
you
a
know,
lot.
he had just met Michelle, who's married. They're married now and have a couple of children in South Beach. And I don't know what to say about Ken. I mean, he really he opened up a lot of doors for me. You know, he introduced me to a lot of people. You know, I met him at a national convention. I had no idea who he was, and I happened to run into Gilmani because I recognized him from magazines and stuff. And he was, you know, I was kind of afraid to talk to him because he looked really mean, and I was just, you know, I was a kid, you know, and I was like, hey, Mr. Monty, do you know this guy named Ken Cameron? He's like, oh yeah, come here, and he grabs me, he like pulls me in this room, and he's like, yeah, the long goatee and long hair over there, hippie looking fucker, that's Ken. I'm like, all right, so go over there and talk to Ken. He's like, oh, you're Frank, cool. So we hung out all weekend, and then set up plans to come back to the shop, and I flew out there, and
So you went back to Cleveland after that, and you were kind of like, you had learned a bunch about the tattoo industry. You had learned about autoclaves.
yeah, I learned about,
what
you know,
good tattoos
going
were, what
from,
was going
you know,
on.
the needles I was using to using 3s, 5s, you know, curved magnums, you know, and
Okay.
he turned me on to different machines, you know, like my first 2 machines were National Swing Gates that, yeah, I would have to say he was probably my first really big influence, other than, you know, my mom just kind of pointed me the way, you know.
Yeah.
So
Well, being born into it, that's gotta be, you know, or having that like right there. You kind of like, you know, I guess you just kind of have to take what's before you, and then you kind of move on from there. I'm sure.
right,
you know,
right.
Whatever kind of starting point that may be. So yeah, you were back in Cleveland. How long did you stay in Cleveland for?
A couple years.
Still working at the family shop.
Yeah.
So now you're in
I
your
had kind
20s.
of you know, gotten to the point where, you know, my stepdad would leave. You know, I was done with my apprenticeship, and I'm pretty much showing everybody that, you know, things that I had learned. You know, I had worked down in Miami, came back, and then Kim Say came to work, and she worked there for a while. Steve Sevenar came to work, and it was a kind of a tight little crew, you know.
Yeah.
And we all kind of bounced back and forth, you know, with artwork and this and that, and then a couple years later, you know, we all split ways. Steve went to Minneapolis to work with Sean Anderson. Kim went to Chicago to work with Guy, and I went to Miami to work with Lou. South Beach because Ken asked me to. So kind of felt like I owed that to him, like
Yeah.
yeah. Even though Lou was a real.
So
I mean, he was a great guy.
Like, bring me.
He taught me a lot about life in general and tattooing, But yeah, he was a really tough guy to work for.
Okay, so just to give us a time reference here, like how old were you and what year was this? Now you're at Tattoos by Lou with Ken Cameron.
Yeah, I did about a month thing where some of his guys wanted to go to Amsterdam, and he called me down to cover, or Ken called me and he was like, "Hey, can you come down and cover for somebody I was going to Amsterdam?" I said, "Yeah, sure."
So this is mid '90s. This is '95, '96, somewhere around.
Yeah,
there.
somewhere around there.
Those guys were taking off to go to.
Actually, no, it was before that.
And so how long you stayed at Lou's? You said you just stayed there for a month, or you were there for much longer than that?
No, I was there for a month, and I got along really great with Luis Segato. He became almost like a father figure to me.
That's cool.
And kind of took me under his wing, and I just showed a little bit of respect to him. Instead of just walking up watching him tattoo, I would ask him, "Do you mind if I watch you do this tattoo?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "You know what? Just because you asked me, most people I tell them to get the fuck out of my room. Come on in." And he would show me stuff, and to this day, we're still really good friends, and I still think of him, as being a really great influence. And at that time, all I wanted to be was as good as Luis,
Huh.
And
amazing.
yeah, but God bless him. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Cool. So who else was working in that shop at that time?
I've met Eric Del Rosal there, everyone's bulldog. Real good friends for a long time. Just about everyone that I worked there at that time were still really good friends. I mean, there's been issues in the past, whatever.
Yeah, it happens,
Yeah, but it's all been smoothed over, and everyone's we're all back.
I was more looking for from an inspirational standpoint, not so much like the shop dynamics or whatever, but who were you encountering at this point in your life? Your early 20s. I'm trying to put the math together.
Well,
at this point you're.
By that time, I had gotten tattooed by Ken, Corey Miller, Little Vinny. Really looked up to Lou, and Luis Segato, and of course Ken. And Jay Pedro was working down there. He did phenomenal work. It's just, and Troy Lane too. He worked there. I can't believe I forgot him. Yeah.
It's funny. Not too many. It's he's one of those people that people forget about.
Not really.
I mean, no. A good number of people that know about him don't really, but for some reason, a lot of times he gets kind of left out of the picture. I don't.
Well, I mean, Troy's one of those guys that's real low key. He does his thing, and he's he jumps out of airplanes every morning before work.
That's amazing.
He's just he's a 40-year-old guy trapped in a 21-year-old's body.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
he's an amazing tattooer too.
Awesome. Everything I've seen from him is perfect.
Everything, yeah.
I'm waiting to see a bad tattoo from him. I want to. I really want to see a bad tattoo from Troy, but I haven't seen one yet.
Right. So then you left Lou's and you went back to Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
And then how long were you there?
Couple more months, and then Lou called me and said he was opening a shop in Hialeah, and he's like, "Oh, it's a gold mine. You got to come down and work." And I was like, "All right, well, who's gonna be working there?" He was like, "You and Mike Wilson, do heavy hitters down there, and you guys are gonna slam. We're gonna have somebody speaking Spanish so that people in the neighborhood can translate, and Hialeah is predominantly Cuban.
Oh yeah.
Nice neighborhood, but very ethnic, and it lasted about 6 months. Me and Mike had a lot of fun. We got along real good. and he wound up going back to Jacksonville to work at Smith and Rogers shortly after I went back to Cleveland, because I just really wasn't into working in Hialeah by myself. And I got a call from Mike like a week later, and he was like, "Hey, listen, man, why don't you come down to Jacksonville and work with me and Eric?"
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's great. It's like, really good opportunity to go work with, Eric Smith and, see all Paul Rogers stuff and all that. And
Be surrounded.
yeah, and that was probably the next best step I could have made. It was as far as like learning traditional tattooing. Like, I wasn't allowed to use Magnum, only 6 flats, and everything was done a certain way. Weren't allowed to use the color brown. If it wasn't done the way Paul did it, we weren't supposed to do it that way.
Okay.
I didn't have an overhead light, and Mike's like, "Hey, he needs a light." He's like, "Paul didn't have a light. He don't need a light." It was that kind of thing.
That's great.
So.
And kind of made you endure probably what he had endured.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah.
So how long did you stay there?
2 years, 2.5. Working with Mike, and
That's awesome.
that was really fun, man. We had a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
time. It was just back then. It was just one ink Smith and Rogers. I think there was 6 now. But
And can try to put a year like on this.
I was 21 when I moved there. I'm 35 now,
35
so do the math.
So 14 years ago. Looking at the 90s, late 90s. We're looking at 96 or
95.
95 or 96.
I did my first set of Flash in Jacksonville in 95.
Okay, so you were starting to. This is like. You were starting to really formulate your own style.
Yeah,
at that
me and
point.
Mike were bouncing back and forth a lot with artwork. Yeah, bounced back and forth a lot with artwork, and it was just it was a really good time, and things were happening. Guy came out, and with all this crazy biomechanical stuff, and then the traditional thing came in. Mike started working with Hank, and doing a lot of conventions, and it was a really good time.
A good time in tattooing. There's a lot
Yeah.
of things being reinvented and.
Yeah, it was a kind of a turning point. Mike started to his work started to evolve. Like, he was doing, going from doing strip Dave Gibson, Eric Smith, Paul Rogers, to doing roses with no outline, and this Jesus out of my forearm. That's like, incredible to this day. It's like 20 years old. The thing's, perfect.
Yeah.
But
So, was there anybody else in the shop at that point? It was just you, Mike, and Eric, or
Yeah.
Okay, it was just one. There was one inksmith, and
one,
Rogers
yeah,
on Atlantic Ave.
yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And
Yeah.
then, like from there, you worked there 2 years, and like, where'd you go from there?
From there, I opened my own shop, and Eric was kind of pissed about it, but Chris Nunez called me up, and he's like, "Hey, I got this shop down here with these 2 guys I want to pull out. If you want to buy in, buy them out, then we'll just be partners. We'll do this." And we did that. And 6 months later, we're at this convention. Klaus Furman shows up out of Vienna, and we got along really good with Klaus. He was just a really easy guy to talk to. Really mellow, and he was like, I want to stay and work for a while. And, we're like, yeah, I'll put you up, in the shop, and, get you a place to stay. Took him out, took him to strip clubs, and it was a little bit different than what he thought it was,
Right.
But,
More of a party.
yeah,
scene,
then when he, invited us to go to Vienna, same thing. It was a little bit different than we expected,
What was that like?
That was insane. It was like a bad dream. So, and he's talking about going to India, and he was like, first time I went to India, it was like a nightmare. And I was like, well, this last month has been like a really fucking bad dream for me. So I could imagine what I'm in for.
What did you encounter there? What do you mean it was a bad dream?
it was everything is opposite. You know, it's weird. It's like, you know, whatever you think, like you think you're like ordering food, you're ordering the right thing, you're ordering you know, something completely fucking
Oh,
different,
because of the
you know?
language barrier.
Yeah.
You're having a hard time due to the language barrier.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I told him I wanted to go work at Hank's, and he kind of wasn't too into that. He's like, "Oh, we got red light dishes." I'm like, "No, it's not about that. You know, I want to go work at Hank's. You know, I wanna, you know."
Well, Mike had been going there at that point. Like,
Yeah.
He'd been going there for quite a few years.
And actually, it's a good point you brought that up, because Freddie Corbin, Eric Hogan, Molly, Hank,
crew, yeah.
and the floor guy Hank were there. So I called Hanky and I was like, "Listen, I want to come work. You know, I'm working in Vienna right now with Klaus." And he's like, "Well, what other shops you work at?" And I was like, "I work with Mike Wilson and you know, in the States." And he was like, "Oh shit, come now." I was like, "Now?" He's like, "Right now." I was like, "All right." So I bought a ticket and I went. I was there the next day,
Cool.
and it was great. You know, just,
Yeah, early 20s in Amsterdam.
yeah, yeah. I'm really glad I went too.
Yeah,
you know, because that's something that couldn't get now.
You're right. Definitely right. Yeah, that shop's not even there anymore, or it's there, but it's owned by other people or whatever. So.
From there, I went to Dallas. Worked in Dallas for 5 or 6 years. It was a good time. I mean, I worked for Eric Inklin, Ace in the Hole. Great guy. I still go out there and work with him every once in a while.
And that kind of brings you to date, or you know, you're back and forth. Where were you working?
No,
You were in Florida, between Florida and
yeah,
Dallas.
Dallas kind of turned sour after a few years, and Bud kind of actually pulled me out. He was like, "Listen, I'm not taking, you know, I'm going to Tampa. Jump in with me. You know, we're gonna go out there and work." So I was like, "All right, you know, go to Tampa." He talks to Danny Knight. Danny Knight's like, "All right, hey, listen, I'm gonna have you come guest spot at my shop. I got you booked for like 2 weeks." I'm like, "All right." You know, Bug's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'm gonna come pick you up." You know, this and that. And I had nothing but my tattoo machines and 3 sets of clothes, you know. So I go to Danny's shop and find out that I was supposed to be there for about 6 months under Danny's lock and key, which was really good for me. You know, it was great. So I eventually wound up coming back down here, and everything's been great since.
What more do you hope to accomplish in tattooing, and like, what are your goals at this point for yourself for the rest of your life in tattooing? It seems like you've been there since a young age. It doesn't seem like you're going anywhere.
No.
What more do you hope to accomplish? Where do you
I'd like to get out to Europe for a while. You know.
Oh, come on, man.
I'm ready. Let's go. I'm down for Singapore in January, Rome in July, and I recently just talked to somebody. This dope ass devil head he had on this thing, you know, but no other pictures. And he friended me and he's, "Oh, I've been a fan of your stuff for a long time." And I wrote him back. I was like, "Man, the devil head is sick. I'd like to see some more of your work." And you know, he's like, "Oh, thanks. Come to Spain." Cool, you know. I'm supposed to be in Australia right now, but I'm here doing this. But yeah, as soon as possible, I like to get out there.
So you want to get out and travel some more, see
For
more
sure,
of the world,
for
and
sure, yeah.
experience more just outside.
Far
of
from
that.
done, you
Right,
know.
right.
I got my second win.